The head of CNN for the last 3 years, hired by the Trump-supporting owner and operator of CNN, is an Englishman who thinks paying Scott Jennings to lie about Donald Trump is money very well spent. Scott Jennings figured out where the money is and how he could get his own podcast and decided to become the J.D. Vance of CNN. Here's how bad that television is that they make over there. The show that Scott Jennings frequents the most is on opposite this program. And that show, on a good night, gets half of the audience of this show. This program usually has an audience triple the size of the terrible television that Scott Jennings is delivering.
Where do I even begin? Where do I even begin with the blatant lies? Where do I begin with the toxic mouth farts? I'm glad I did my push-ups this morning because my arms will be working overtime to remove all the polish from these verbal turds. Why don't we start with the irony of MSNBC criticizing and accusing CNN for lying? Let me make sure I'm understanding Larry O'Connell correctly. But my name is Lawrence O'Donnell.
It doesn't matter what your name is.
According to Larry, CNN is no bueno. We should not be watching CNN and the American hero Scott Jennings. I am a real American. We should not be watching the American hero because he lies about Donald Trump. Well, this is very strange since, MSNBC spent the better part of 4 years lying about the illusion of Russian collusion. Remember the clips of Rachel Maddow that I played in the video yesterday afternoon? Remember when Rach was claiming, if you get vaccinated, the COVID magically disappears? Yippee! Not only does MSNBC lie about the Trumper, Larry O'Connell also lies about his ratings. Every night, my primetime dump doubles and sometimes triples the audience of that vile American hero. They must be utilizing the woke calculator at MSNBC, where 2 + 2 equals LGBT, where the magical equation consisting of the number 8 along with a string of equals and a greater than sign means, let me get that wiener. Last week, the American hero averaged 557,000 viewers. Unfortunately, ratings are only available for 2 days last week for Larry O'Connell. If I had to guess, he was busy the other 3 days trying to deflower the woman of his dreams, Rose O'Donnell. Of course, Rose, she would not let Larry or any other man for that matter fertilize her garden. But anyway, Larry averaged 926,000 viewers last week. Now, according to my calculations, which are accurate, Larry did not double the American hero's audience, and he damn sure didn't hit a triple. He struck out with Rose, then he returned to work and struck out again. To make matters worse, the American hero dominated Larry O'Connell where it actually counts. Larry might be dominant in the preseason, but the American hero, he always steps up. He always delivers where it actually matters in the 25 to 54 demo. Last week, Scott Jennings averaged 113,000 viewers in the key demo. Well, KC, don't you mean Abby Phillip? She's the host of the show. No, I mean Scott Jennings. No one is watching that show to see Abby Phillip. Remember Molly Karam, the now former host of First Take on ESPN? Remember how she thought that she was the star? Remember how she thought she was partially responsible for the ratings? Remember what happened to Molly Karam with that flawed mentality? She got fired. Last week, the American Hero averaged 113,000 viewers in the key demo. Larry O'Connell averaged an abysmal 69,000, but that's okay. That's okay. You see, the reason Larry O'Connell is criticizing Scott Jennings is because he's threatened by him. There also might be a little bit of jealousy here because the American Hero, he is now being presented with an amazing opportunity. The problem is, if Scott Jennings accepts this opportunity, the CNN Titanic will officially sink. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. Later today on the second channel, going to be talking about Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss begging for support. If students and alumni at Ole Miss aren't careful, they're about to run one of the best coaches in the SEC out of town. If you've ever been to Mississippi before, you already know doesn't take very much to convince people with options to get the hell out of there. I'll give you all the details about what's going on at Ole Miss, so click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. For years now, I have been telling you guys that CNN is in desperate need of star power. When they promoted Caitlin Collins, Katie Roo! When they promoted the girl named Rue to prime time, I told you guys this was not going to work. Yes, Katie Rue is young. Yes, she is easy on the eyes. Say what you want about Don Lemon, but Donnie knew how to generate interest. Donnie knew how to generate headlines. Caitlin Collins is about as interesting as an armless man trying to scratch his own ass. One of the reasons CNN has been struggling for years, they have no compelling stars. There is absolutely no reason for casual viewers to watch this dump of a network. I mean, seriously. Who is tuning in to see Laura Coates? Who wants to see Abby Phillip condescendingly lecture us on fake racism? Andy Cooper looks like a retired librarian. The network is an unmitigated disaster, except for the one star that CNN has managed to create, Scott Jennings. I want you to think about something. Outside of Scott Jennings, when is the last time you have seen someone else at CNN generate headlines throughout the media? When is the last time you have seen a viral clip of someone other than Scott Jennings? This dude is the only reason, and I mean the only reason, people are paying attention to CNN. And they're at serious risk of losing the American Hero because CNN has once again failed to listen to Uncle KC. Since last year, we have been saying that Scott Jennings needs his own show. At minimum, CNN should move the American Hero up an hour in prime time and relocate Caitlin Collins to a time slot that no one is watching because no one is watching Rue anyway. Unfortunately, CNN refused to listen, and now they are at serious risk of losing the American Hero to CBS. You know, part of me understands CNN's hesitation to give Scott Jennings his own show. For starters, the current format is working with Abby Phillip. The maniacs that he destroys on a nightly basis, they might not be comfortable appearing on a show that's hosted by Scott Jennings. They're comfortable with Abby Phillip because they know it's four lunatics against the American Hero. They know they won't be all alone. So part of me understands CNN's hesitation, but that hesitation, it could end up costing CNN their only star. Barry Weiss is the new boss at CBS. Now, for those that don't know, CBS was recently purchased by Skydance Media. Network is now owned by Larry Ellison, which means they're probably looking to get rid of the woke wanker spankers and hire people who have the potential to actually draw an audience. One of the main stars that Barry Weiss is looking to hire is the American hero Scott Jennings. Not only are they willing to break the bank for Scotty, they're also negotiating to give the American hero his own show. At minimum, he would be heavily featured on shows like CBS This Morning or Face the Nation, but either way, the CBS platform is significantly larger than the sinking turd at CNN. But believe it or not, I would imagine that this is a difficult decision for Scott Jennings to make. Well, Uncle Casey, that's ludicrous. This is an easy decision. This is his chance to get away from the lunatics at CNN and be featured on a network that people are actually watching. Yeah, that's definitely true. But on some level, I'm sure Scott Jennings appreciates CNN. You got to remember, Scott Jennings was unknown. This dude was working for Mitch McDonald. Remember him? That doofus senator from Kentucky who was racing John Biden to be the first to knock on heaven's door? When Scott Jennings arrived at CNN, he was a nobody. I know CNN is a flaming ass fire, but credit where credit is due. CNN made Scott Jennings a star. Hell, he's the first star that CNN's actually created in years, maybe even decades. They came up with the perfect formula. They paired the American hero with dumbasses, and they allowed him to humiliate them on a nightly basis for our enjoyment and our entertainment. So I'm sure this is a difficult decision for Scott Jennings to make. Now for CNN, this is an easy decision. You do everything you can to keep your only star. This is the problem. When you are heavily reliant on one star to carry your primetime lineup. MSNBC knows about this problem. They've been heavily reliant on Rachel Maddow. New Orleans Pelicans, they have been dealing with the same problem for years. When Zion Williamson is playing, Pelicans are a playoff contender. The one season Zion was healthy, Pelicans won 49 games and would have avoided the play-in if Zion didn't tear his hamstring late in the fourth quarter against the Lakers. But when Zion Williamson is out, which happens very often, the Pelicans completely fall apart. First two games of the season with Zion, they were competitive. He misses the game last night. Pelicans lose by 30 points to a Celtics team who haven't won a game all season. It will be the same with CNN if Scott Jennings leaves for CBS. Like I said, the American hero is the only star at the network. Scott Jennings is the only one that generates any mainstream interest. Hell, he's the reason that CNN consistently beats MSNBC in the 25-54 demo. If he leaves for CBS, who does CNN have to replace him? You tell me. Sound off in the comments below. I'll see you guys later.